All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. I'm your host, JK, and we are kicking off another free flow episode. I did one of these, I believe it was last Friday. Free flow episode, very similar to if you've been a listener of the podcast for a while, previous topic or previous thing that I was doing called a Friday 4. This is similar, however, I'm not going to always promise that it'll be 4 topics. This is something to take a bit of a break from some of the fitness and training and nutrition content. As much as I absolutely love eat, sleeping, and breathing, all things fitness related, I also am interested in other things. And I have gotten feedback from a few folks that primarily the reason that they initially tuned in to the Help Me Understand podcast, although they enjoy the fitness content, was also because of some of the other perspectives that I would share on things outside of fitness. So with that being said, I figured, you know what, I'll still keep up some of these episodes. So we're just going to free flow it here. I've got 4 things that I happen to jot down here in the last 30 minutes. That's basically the way that it goes. I sit down, map out some time, and just jot down some things that are not necessarily front of mind, but have come to mind possibly over the past week or so. Maybe a saved link, like one of them is going to be based on a story that was saved from Box Life magazine talking about unattainable body image, and actually digs into a TikTok posted by Jessica Biel. Another topic is going to be just a recommendation for this kind of interesting experiment that's turned into a YouTube channel called My Life by AI. Also want to share a perspective with you on what's going on with the funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And then, and I may not keep this order, then also just share a perspective that I have for you on really paying attention to getting an understanding for what people's true intentions and what their agenda is based on what they talk about. So first, before going into any of those topics, let me make sure that I take a moment to say thank you for choosing to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast. I know that there are other podcasts that you can listen to and consume, and you very well do listen to and consume those other podcasts. I just want to express gratitude for you also including the Help Me Understand podcast in your lineup. I don't take that for granted. So thank you so much for pressing play. And if you could do me a favor and hop on to whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on, or if you happen to be watching this episode on YouTube, leave a comment, like, rating, review. If you're on YouTube or any of the other platforms, please subscribe and follow the show. I have been able to get a bit of a better understanding of the difference between the number of listens and the people who actually listen or subscribe or follow the actual podcast itself. And which I've come to understand is pretty common in the podcasting world, that you will have more streams and downloads than you will people who are subscribed to the podcast. And really the only thing that I see as it's not even really a downside. Like really, when you subscribe to a particular podcast, it, 1, notifies you when a new episode is available, and then 2, it helps to boost the popularity of that particular podcast and recommends it to other people. So I would appreciate that. All right, let's start off with first, just because this will be for me a pretty quick one, because I have not, very transparently here, have not dug super deep into a lot of detail of what's going on with the funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. From the limited amount of looking into this that I've done, and me mentioning that will also correlate with why I want to share this with you. From what I can understand, it seems as though about 70% of the funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which funds stations across the nation, like PBS and NPR and different local radio stations and television stations, public broadcasting stations, that funding is going to be cut. And so the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has announced that they are going to essentially shutter their organization as of, I've heard anything from September to January, based on what I can see. From my perspective, the overall way that I would summarize this is that you have a number, like over 1,000. I believe the last number that I happened to notice was 1,500 different stations in some way, shape, or form, which will be affected somehow. Some reports are saying that those stations will just be absolutely shut down. That is quite a concerning, considering that there are rural areas, especially more underserved areas when it comes to actual access to things like this, that will no longer potentially either have all of that access or maybe limited access to that information. From what I can just basically understand, the idea of utilizing taxpayer funding for things like PBS and NPR has been somewhat controversial for a number of years. So this is not the first time that this has been a topic in the news. It does seem like it is the first time is that the funding has been cut to a point where this organization will no longer exist. And a big kind of pushing point in the argument against continuing to fund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is that they have presented, the argument is that they no longer or don't present an unbiased opinion or unbiased news. They will skew things. And in our current administration, there seems to be an overall narrative of pushing the message that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the stations that it supports are very anti our current president. Long story short. So what I find interesting, and really just my straight up opinion on this is a really, really, really dangerous move, because where I think that we'll see the majority of people either not starting to get, I think that people have already started getting the majority of where they feel like they're getting their quote unquote information, getting it from social media and podcasts like this, or like ones that tout themselves as news podcasts. So I say that because on a daily basis in my in-person job outside of the fitness industry, I interact with the general public for an average of about 40-ish hours a week. And when I say that I interact with thousands of people, thousands of different people per week, like actually speak with thousands of people per week on a weekly basis, that's not an overstatement at all. And I can tell you that even in the very limited scope that I have in the grand scheme of things, with how many interactions go on across the state, the country, and the globe, even the very limited sliver of interaction that I have, the amount of times that I am working to try to help someone understand how to solve a particular problem or get through a particular situation they have, conflict resolution, whatever it may be, the amount of times that the person is coming into that particular conversation or situation believing that they're well informed because of something that they heard on social media or read on social media or heard on a podcast, it's troubling. It's really, really, really troubling. So to now be in a position where organizations, and NPR is one that I'm more familiar with, because for a good period of time, I would listen to NPR in the car on the radio. So I would listen to that prior to really getting into podcasts back in the day. So stations like NPR, and then even listening to one of my favorite podcasts, like Up First by NPR, and just getting an understanding for different aspects of things that were going on in the news, now no longer having outlets like that available, and really shifting things towards, again, podcasts and social media. I mean, that's pretty much where things are going to come from. And, not live shows, but we'll say like CNN, Fox News, CBS. I mean, they're still going to, those are the most popular shows on there from my point of view, are typically shows that are based on personalities. So you'll have a big personality host who then brings a panel on and all that stuff, shifting to that being the primary source of where people are going to their information from. And let's not get it twisted. I would say that the average person likely consumes more podcast and social media content than they do like news content. And when I say podcast, I mean like a podcast where there's a host and they have a discussion, or they're just like me, maybe doing a monologue, just spouting about random things, versus actual journalism. I think that don't think it would be a shock if you really sit down. I mean, even myself, I barely listen to like really news based podcasts other than pretty much mostly the NPR stuff. I think that's something that can be really concerning, because we're already, from my point of view, in a position where people are taking things that are really more opinions. And I did an episode quite some time ago, or recently, not that long ago, about the difference between an opinion, having an opinion, giving advice, and then giving counsel. And I was talking more from the coaching aspect there. However, maybe there's some sort of kind of format for that for the news also. And I think getting an understanding that there is a difference between news and entertainment, and that category called infotainment. And when you are listening to something like, for me, when I listen to NPR, I I get more of the vibe of I'm listening to information. It's not super slick with the production. I mean, I listen to also the Daily and the Journal, and those are more production based. Okay. So those, there's like some interesting music in the background or whatever. NPR up first, not not all about that, right? It's generally pretty dry. So I think that the dangerous area that we're going to be getting into is where folks are going to be taking entertainment and infotainment as information. And I really, really, I think that's going to be tough. So I'm all about, instead of just talking about, okay, well, this is not a great move, or this is a problem and whatnot, and not giving any sort of a solution. I certainly don't know what the actual solution is. I can tell you for myself, I will likely be doubling down on trying to incorporate more news and journalism sources, because over the years I've come to grow even more and more and more interested in actual journalistic style stories, like stories that really dig into particular events that have happened, particular policies that are going on. And the challenge is those things take time to develop. So something may happen on January 2nd, and it's now August 1st, and now would be about the time that stories are starting to come out to really give you the backstory on what happened. And I'm really interested in things like that. So very rarely do I like have a massive reaction to particular events that happen. I am typically more of the, okay, I'm more interested in like what was at the root of this that allowed this particular thing to happen. Like some years ago when there were the wildfires out west. And I remember with that particular story, just being interested in, okay, I understand that there are wildfires that are happening. I'm just curious, like, how did we get here? Like, what was at the root cause of not just the wildfires themselves happening, but how do you end up in a situation where it's just something is just so uncontrollable and just spreads so quickly? And then I come to find out after waiting for a while, and then the stories months and months later start to come out, and we end up finding out that, gosh, I can't even remember the name of the company. I think it was Pacific Gas and Energy, because I even read a book about the entire topic later on that was written. And what was at the base, from my perspective, what was at the base of that issue with the wildfires is how the power company is compensated, or basically how they're valued. And they're valued based on different new things that they do versus actually investing into safety measures. So slowly but surely, over the number of years, they essentially slowly whittled down the things that they were doing from a safety perspective. They were inspecting the towers less and less and less. And lo and behold, what first sparked those wildfires was an old hook that was decades old, that had not been noticed because inspections were further and further and further apart. That hook falls, there's branches that are some sort of like not wildlife. Why can I not talk? Brush fires. or brush that's near the actual tower itself, that sparks. So that had not been kept up either. So that sparks and that sets off the wildfires. You don't get really stories like that unless you actually allow the story to develop. And that's journalism and that's news. And those are the types of things that I see organizations like NPR digging into. And there's certainly other ones too. It's just that's an example that's really front of mind for me that comes into play when talking about really removing the funding for public broadcasting. There, of course, are a number of kids programs and things like that are going to be affected too. So I just wanted to mention that because that was something that is definitely on my radar right now, not specifically just for the fact that that basically there's the defunding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It's more in the bigger picture. I believe that there is a massive shift that is continuing to happen. I don't think it's a start. I think it's continuing to happen where more and more people are relying on infotainment as their primary source of what's actually happening. So critical thinking skills will become more and more and more and more important here. All right. Topic number 2. So interestingly enough, with this one, what I want to talk about is just some thoughts that I've got on some comments that people have made around what is or isn't attainable as far as a really ripped, like lean physique for female, especially. So interestingly enough, this first came across my radar from an episode of a podcast called Your Strongest Body, and it's hosted by a fellow coach and who I'd consider to be a friend, Betsy Foster. She hosts this podcast called Your Strongest Body. And if that name, Betsy Foster, sounds familiar to you, she has been on the Help Me Understand podcast within the last few months. And then I was on her previous podcast called Coach's Chat. So a few episodes ago, within the last month, let's say, Betsy did an episode, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but I think it was just called something like Jessica Biel's Unattainable Body. And I listened to the episode because I'm a regular listener of her podcast. If you don't listen to Betsy's podcast and you're interested in all things fitness and nutrition for women and really that focus on what it really takes to build your strongest body from the inside out, then you are missing out. So shameless plug, you should listen to Your Strongest Body. In fact, I'll link that episode in the show notes. I'll link the Apple version of the episode in the show notes. But anyways, that's where it first came across my radar. So I listened to that episode and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And what I took away is that Betsy was talking about how it was really cool that Jessica Biel had talked about some comments that she was getting in a movie or was it a movie? Let me actually kind of pull this up real quick. She was in, it's either a movie or a series. I know my wife watched this. I did not, called The Better Sister. And Jessica Biel had gotten a bunch of comments about like how good she looked, ripped, lean, all that jazz, toned, all the words. And she created a TikTok where she was letting people know like that look is not maintainable at all. So like basically don't get it twisted. So I thought the episode was good. And then on what popped up in my algorithm, and it was on Facebook actually, on Facebook, a article from Box Life magazine. Speaking of talking about getting your news from Facebook, here we go. An article from Box Life magazine popped up, and I think that the photo that they posted just had the clickbaity tagline that basically just said like Jessica Biel says her look is not maintainable. And then there were a bunch of comments, and I'll get to that in just a second. So I opened up the article because I was like, this is interesting because I remember Betsy talking about this. So look at the article, and it has a snippet of the video from TikTok, and I don't have TikTok. I think I posted one video there 2 years ago and then have never opened it ever again. So there you go. But she essentially in the video posts a reel where she's talking and she's got the little sticker comment where someone says something about like how she looked in the dress, and they were like, hey, drop the workout routine, but from my point of view, yeah, she looked ripped, shredded, toned, the whole nine in this photo. I haven't seen the movie or the TV show. But the commenter said, hey, drop the workout routine. And Jessica Biel takes the time to explain, and I jotted down what she said because I think that it was so just straight and to the point what she said. So she said a few things, but the main part that she said is, unless you're living the strictest and most rigid lifestyle with your nutrition and fitness, this look is not maintainable. She said, I mean, overall, just to paraphrase what she talked about in the little TikTok snippet before then sharing what her lower body routine was, she essentially said that the rigidity and the strictness of what she had to do in order to get to that physique that people were going like bonkers over with nutrition and fitness, she wasn't willing to do that. She's like, that's not maintainable when it comes to my lifestyle. So that's the one part. And I was like, yeah, snaps on that. That's cool. Here's the thing that I thought was kind of interesting. People jumped in the comments. And when I say people, and I'm going to try and pull it up while I'm on the podcast here because I saved the link. When I say people, I mean like people who some of the names I actually recognize from being in the fitness industry because the online fitness industry, after a while, especially within my age bracket, and I'm in my mid 40s, you start to see some of the same names pop up. And then just some other folks that were commenting, and it was really interesting how many people on the Facebook comments disagreed with her. So there were comments like, her look is maintainable, a mix of strength training and nutrition to get there. It's not easy. I live this life all year long, but it takes discipline. I still work full time, have kids, pets, etc. I just don't have a social life. And that was from a woman. Then there's a man who comments, how is it not maintainable? I know women in their 40s and 50s that have looked like that for years. Another woman says, yes, it is if you put in the work. All these people who don't have the same body and do not put in the same work. And then there was a guy that commented, and I actually responded to this comment just because why not? He said, what are these people saying not maintainable? Just has all day to work out. She doesn't work a typical 9 to 5 where you're sitting all day. She's an actor that is always on the move. It's 100% maintainable for her career choice. And I just made a comment that I think that's part of the misconception here. Like you're forming your opinion based solely on a career. And she, like most people, probably have lives outside of their career. And that includes things that they value like relationships and so on. So I think what was interesting to me is within the fitness industry, we as coaches are constantly trying to help everyday people like ourselves understand that what they see in photos and videos from whether it comes from a celebrity or another coach even or an influencer or somebody in between, like a lot of times when they see that extremely ripped, lean, toned physique, there we are spending time, trying to help that individual, the client, the commenter, whoever it might be, understand, listen, yeah, can you get there? Absolutely. Can you do it and still do the things that you're currently doing right now? Absolutely not. Like having a glass of wine 3 to 4 times a week. No, that may need to go and most likely will need to go. Deciding that you are going to like just YOLO once a week where you're just kind of not really paying attention to what you're eating. No, probably not. Can you just work out and do body weight and not have to actually step inside of a gym or get heavier weights at home and get that physique? Probably not. Like we spend a decent amount of time trying to help people really align their expectations with the lifestyle that they actually want. And here for once, we have somebody who's being, let's say, just somewhat transparent and trying to basically like talk people off the ledge and say like, yo, everybody pipe down for a minute because I am the person who is in that body and I am telling you that that is not maintainable. I am telling you it's not maintainable unless you are rigid and strict. And it seems to me that a whole lot of people that commented didn't actually watch the video. They just looked at the headline. And here I have the headline. After her viral physique and the better sister, Jessica Biel admits that look isn't maintainable. Now she's sharing her realistic strength routine at 43. So this unknowingly, I didn't even realize this relates to the very first thing that I brought up, where you have people that barely read past a headline. Like if they had taken even, I think it took me 7 seconds to watch the video that was posted, where she simply says, it's not maintainable unless you're living the strictest and most rigid lifestyle with your nutrition and your fitness. So for all of the frustration that myself and other coaches feel when we are trying to help people understand the reality of what's really going on behind the scenes when they see somebody who is, pardon the term, dick skin lean, and what's really happening behind the scenes. Because folks, I am going to tell you, I know plenty of people who have been that lean before. I myself have been that lean before. I currently do not desire to get that lean currently. Not saying never again, but currently I do not desire to get dick skin lean. That took a good amount of focus and sacrifice. And yeah, I'm just not really down with that right now. Maybe sometime again in the future, I might give it another shot. But for right now, yes, I'll eventually go into another cut, get pretty lean, but getting like super, 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 super duper lean. Those who know, if you know, that's all I'm going to say. If you know, you know. So people that are in the comments saying like, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about, it's totally maintainable, that sort of a thing. Cool. If you say so, that's fine. It's just, it's very interesting when you have like the source of the body itself, that person, that human, that individual telling you that it's not maintainable for her unless she does X, Y, and Z. And you're like, yeah, but you're wrong. You don't understand. You don't really know your own experience. That's wild to me. So just wanted to share that. It was like, man, finally we've got somebody with a platform who is telling the truth about it. And people are like, yeah, that's not really, your truth is not the real truth. That's just crazy to me. All right. All right. Couple other things and we'll just wrap up here. Just a content recommendation for you. And I haven't done this in quite a long time. I used to kind of pretty consistently recommend some content for you to watch. This was pretty cool. There's a YouTube channel and it's called My Life by AI. And what this channel is, a guy, I don't even remember his real name. He is from, I believe, somewhere in the UK, and he was a data scientist or data engineer. The way the story goes, from what I can follow, is he got let go from his job, and he decided that he was going to utilize AI, and he nicknamed his AI Arthur. And he was going to use AI to help him with two main things. One was his job search, and the second one was to help him get in shape. And his goal specifically has been to lose weight. So I can't remember the amount of time that it's been already. It's been a number of months so far. But I believe at last glance, this guy is down like 64 pounds, staying pretty active, and also has been able to, from what he's reported, unexpectedly just turn YouTube into his full-time gig. So what's really interesting about this is not just the whole story about like he's used AI to lose weight and then also had previously used it in his job search. He would put in certain things with his resume and then different jobs that were available and ask AI to help recommend which jobs he should or shouldn't apply to. He would talk to AI about the interview, like basically used it as a career coach. What I found really interesting is he peels back a lot of the layers on how he's actually utilizing the prompts for weight loss. I found this and still find this because he's still doing it on this channel. Again, it's called My Life by AI. I'll put a link in the show notes for it. It's really cool because he peels back the layers and really talks to you and shows you not just the prompts that he uses, it's really his consistent follow-up. Like he consistently just follows up and says, hey, this is what happened when I did this. This is how I felt. He's utilized it to input his preferences for what he does or doesn't want to eat. He, at one point, I know it injured, I believe, his back or maybe his hamstrings were feeling really tight or his hips, something like that. So he asked AI what he should do. And then AI walked him through like a whole routine. I have just found the thing really, really fascinating because it's beyond just the here's the prompts that you use. It's also about the consistent follow-up, and along each step of the way, he's keeping this AI model updated on what's working and what's not working. And then he'll ask, okay, or he'll basically prompt it and say, take all of the information that I have. I'm just paraphrasing. Take all the information I gave you last week, recap all of that, and let's make the plan for the upcoming week. He even will ask, what sort of eating style do you think is going to work for me, and all this other stuff. I have just found the thing to be completely fascinating. As somebody who is in the fitness coaching industry, a very common topic / question is, are you afraid that AI is going to replace your job? And my answer is no, I'm not. And one of the reasons that I'm not is because for myself, I believe that one of my primary areas of focus that I really, really don't think AI and don't believe that AI will be able to do is get a true understanding for what's like really going on and where people really are, like that assessment and awareness phase in my 4A framework. That's really my jam, in getting an understanding of where people really are and how fitness really fits into their life. I say that I'm not worried about AI because, number one, I use AI for different things. I will word dump and dump a lot of thoughts in there and ask it to reorganize it for me. All sorts of different, just random things I will do all the time because I find the tool to be useful. What I think is really cool here is, or excuse me, this is why I use AI sometimes to organize what I'm thinking about. What I am not worried about, or the reason I'm not worried about it with AI, with what I do, is because the tools are only going to be as good as the input that you give it. And you may have heard that before. Kelly and I have talked about that on the Lifting, Running, and Living podcast before, that it's basically garbage in, garbage out, like good stuff in, good stuff out. It's all going to depend. And working with a number of people over the years, one of the most common like breakthroughs that they have within the first few months, and it typically takes months, so it's a methodical process. One of the first like massive breakthroughs that they have is when they start realizing, like, oh, all along I thought I was doing, I thought I was pretty consistent with this, and when I wouldn't be consistent with it, I thought it was because of this reason, or I thought it was this reason. Now I'm starting to see it was because I was building a system that wasn't aligned with the way my life actually works. And it wasn't even, a very common thing is people who were trying to be like way too rigid and restrictive. Speaking of the Jessica Biel thing, all these topics are going together. People trying to be too rigid and restrictive around like their exercise and their nutrition, and it didn't ever take into account their actual life. So then when, the partner comes home with pizza and beer on a Friday night because it's like, hey, it's our pizza night, what's going on? They would feel like, okay, well, all of a sudden now I'm off track and I'm off plan. I'm like, well, that's a part of your life. How did you not say it this way? But it's like, well, how did you not plan that in? Because that's been a part of your life every other week. Or, that when football season rolls around, you're a massive fan of X team and you always host like the Sunday football parties. Like, why would you not work that into your plan? They're like, well, I guess I just didn't think about that, or, things along that line. So those are the things that, unless you are very, very on point, I mean, like this guy is, and this guy, I think his background is a data scientist or data engineer. I can't remember which one. That definitely plays a role in there because he is acutely aware of the importance of inputting the right information. And I think that's what really is the game changer when it comes to the kind of the beauty of how this guy is doing it, is he is intimately aware. Did I say that right? I don't know. Of the importance of the right information going into the system. Like he gets that. That is more aware than the average person. I'm telling you. And I'm telling you this as a coach, like even for myself, when I've worked with other coaches, my friend Mike Milner uses this phrase all the time. He's like, they help me see my blind spots. And even, he's one of the best coaches in the business, and even he has coaches. So I think that that's something that's just really important to remember. If you are someone who is in a field, whether it be in the fitness industry, education, wherever you may be, and you're thinking about AI and wondering how it's going to impact your role, I think the main thing is to stay close to understanding the importance of the information that's going into the model, because the model does the learning. But if you are giving it biased information, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, to learn from, then it's going to give you that. So it basically has like a built-in bias to learn based on what information it's being given. So anyways, that's a recommendation for you, My Life by AI. All right. Last thing that we've got here for this free flow, and then we're going to shut it down. I jotted this down, and I'll riff on this for just a quick minute, and then we'll close out today's episode. And what I jotted down is when people speak up slash what they speak up about is an indicator of what they're focused on. I've been thinking about this a bit more recently based on just different things that I'll just straight up say it, that like I see our president tweet or X or whatever it's called about. And one thing that comes to mind is when there are tragedies, when we had the plane collision that happened, I believe, in the DC area, and a part of the commentary from his administration being around essentially referencing the gender of the pilot being a factor in the plane crash, and essentially utilizing it to further the agenda for against diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think I try to scope out a bit wider, and things like that, especially from this current administration, are not surprising. Like, that's not surprising at all. And the reason that it's not surprising is because I'm a firm believer, and I'm a part of this too, that what people speak up about, especially during events, like things that happen, is a very clear indicator of what they're absolutely focused on. And I really want you to think about this in terms of just day-to-day life. Like the random thing that might happen, like something happens, and you can have that friend or that family member who notices like the most like obscure thing, and like, how was that even a focus right now out of all the things? Think about it. It's like the family member. I'm not going to try and snitch anybody out in my own family, but it's like the family member who there'll be a photo that gets posted, whether it's on Facebook or you send them a photo in the group chat or whatever it might be, and they're like, it's like a photo from a reunion. I'm making up a scenario just so I don't get myself in trouble. So say it's a photo from a reunion that gets posted, and you got 20 people in the group chat, and there's always that one person who's like, oh yeah, so dang, when did JK start wearing red shoes? And it's like, man, this is like a photo of this fantastic memory, and the thing that you're focused on is his shoes. That's kind of the vibe that I get sometimes, or that's the vibe that I believe is an indicator of really starting to get an understanding of what really matters to particular people. So I guess I just want to share that just to say, like, really pay attention to the people around you and what they comment on in times where there are either great events or not so great events or whatever the case may be. Because this whole thing where later on somebody will talk to me and say, man, I never realized so and so was like this. Like, I never realized they leaned this way politically. I never realized they supported this person. I never realized that they were aligned with this particular way of thinking. And it's kind of front of mind for me now, because I recently had an interaction with somebody that was really disappointed about something that another person posted on their social media page, and they were just telling me like, man, I was just so disappointed, and I just couldn't have seen that coming. And as we were talking, because we both know the individual, I said, all right, you really couldn't have seen that coming? I mean, let's recap a couple of things that we've both been around for, and this is what that person has kind of has commented about. Like, how would that not be an indicator? And they were just, it was like a light bulb moment. They were like, snap, I never put two and two together. So I realize I'm just kind of rambling here, so we're going to wrap up the episode, but that's what I just want to share with you here. Like, really pay attention and be observant and listen when listen from the aspect of really seeking to understand. Like that's the whole idea. Like it helps you understand the perspective somebody is coming from, the angle that they're bringing into the thing, because more often than not, it will give you the indicator of what that particular individual is focused on. And I certainly don't intend this to mean like be suspicious of everyone or anything like that. It's just, especially these days where it seems like certain things, whether it be political or otherwise, are so just emotionally charged. Getting an understanding of who you're dealing with here can be really helpful and save you a whole lot of time and especially mental energy down the road. Because that person that you've known for a few years who all of a sudden like posts something that's just completely out of pocket, that you're like, man, I just never saw that coming. I'm like, are you sure you never saw that coming? Because it seemed pretty clear that every time there was this thing that happened, they were always with that vibe. It's like, oh, but I thought that was different. Well, no, not really. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right. Weird note to end on, but we're going to end it. So if you've listened this long, hey, I appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in to another free flow episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. Tune in on Tuesdays where it's always fitness focused. If that's more your vibe, then tune in then. Otherwise, take care. Thanks again for being here, and I'll talk to you next time.